I'm honored to serve on the Little Markets Council. For those of you who don't know the Little Market, they are a nonprofit organization committed to breaking the cycle of poverty for women globally. I'm thrilled to be here with my friends, Nicole Richie and Cleo Wade. Welcome to both of you. Today, we're going to be talking about how to lead with love. In today's world, I don't think we talk enough about love, and I think we need to. As you have said, Cleo, we can only change the world if we're brave enough to care.
Hi, I'm Cleo Wade, and I'm so excited to be having this conversation with two of my best friends, Nicole and Sophia. Thanks for having us, Little Market, and congratulations.
Hi, I'm Nicole Richie, and I'm also delighted to serve on the Little Markets Council. I want to give them a huge shout out because they reached a very important milestone recently. They have provided over 1 million hours of dignified work to artisans all over the world. That's an amazing achievement.
Hi, guys. I'm so happy to be with my best friends in a virtual space. And today we're going to have a conversation for the Little Market about leading with love. And both of you lead with love in my life in a very important way. And so I would love to talk about that and what, Cleo, obviously that is very much your ethos. And so I would love to know, what is the best way to lead with love?
You know, I think that one of the first things you can do is really define love for yourself so that you know what you mean when you even say the word. And I think that we live a lot of our lives without really taking intentional time to define what these really big words and concepts like love mean. So what are some of the qualities that go into that word, right? You know, is a love within love? Is there curiosity? Is there reciprocity? Is there tenderness? Is there empathy? Is there compassion? Is there non-judgmentalism? And so I think first and foremost, finding what that word means to you in the deepest possible and most aspirational way, and then trying to live those qualities.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Nicole implies leading with love because you're so much yourself. And so I think like that is also a version of love, is like loving yourself so much that you're willing to be yourself all the time. So Nicole, what makes you feel like you get to be yourself all the time? I mean, honestly, I feel like both of you bring a lot of tenderness and love to my life. So it's like nice to share it with people.
Ooh, well, I feel that way about you. You know, getting to know yourself and loving yourself is really an ongoing journey. It's not some destination that you get to, at least for me. I feel like I am understanding myself and getting to know myself and truly accepting every part of myself, my past selves. You know, that's something that I have a different relationship with every year. And, you know, so like, I think it's just like understanding what that journey is and knowing that that's probably for the rest of your life. And I would hope that it will be for the rest of my life, because it's actually so much fun. And having friends like you guys who really support and kind of leave no other room for anything other than just being yourself and coming to the table as you. Because that's always going to be the best version of.
Yeah, both of you have like explicitly taught me about friendship. Like Cleo is the perfect friend to be like, I'm going to dive in with you. And then like, we also don't need to talk every single day, but like, I know with all my heart that like when we talk, yeah, it's amazing. Nicole's the same way. I mean, like, it's the freedom in that I think when I was younger, and like I had so many best friends and so many people that I loved, and I still love all those people, but I really value the like specificness of our relationship, where there's like no doubt in my mind that our connection is real, and we like are on a group text and we'll have a subject we want to talk about, and then we can go back to our you know, our regular lives, and like there's just no space in that. And like Cleo, I'm just curious, like how did you share so much creatively with your poetry, but then there is this like boundary and reservation that you have that like makes me love you more. It doesn't make me feel like I get less of you.
Well, you know, it's kind of like Nicole said, where, you know, it's about everything changes every year. And so much of kind of finding the self-love space is through the self-acceptance space. And there's no way to do that without investigating, right? And so for me, I spend a lot of time investigating, like, ooh, how do I feel when I'm with this person? Does this feel good? Does this feel right? Does this not? And I'd say that I think that one of the things that the three of us bond so much on is that type of self-investigating that we're always doing. And the way that we also really are there for each other to hold each other accountable to the aha moments, so like, Nicole might text me and be like, no, I realize this and this and this, and I need a boundary in this way with this person in my life. And I'll say like, I'm totally ready to help hold you accountable to that. Like, I'm here for your boundaries. And so I think that, and I think that, those types of boundaries, I mean, Sophia, you're kind of the queen of really great boundaries. I remember once you were telling me like, you're one of my first friends and maybe still one of my only friends who would put read receipts on. And I was like, what's the deal with the read receipts? Like, I don't understand. Like, that's my nightmare. And you were like, I think it's a good boundary. Like, I think it's good. And it wasn't actually until years later, I was like, it is a good boundary because it shows that like, having read something doesn't mean I'm ready to respond to something. It mean I still need time, or that, I actually take a certain space of my day to respond to certain things. And I don't just constantly disrupt myself by making sure I can, alleviate someone else's anxiety all throughout the day by like responding at a pace that works for them, but doesn't work for me. And so I think a lot of that, boundaries are such a big part of self-care. And I think that, self-care is how self-love functions. Like, I always kind of say that, if self-love says, I love you, self-care says, prove it. It's really how we prove that way that we love ourselves. And, one of the things that Nicole once said to me that was I literally think I repeat it every time I do a public talk anywhere, is that I remember asking you kind of like how you practice self-care. And you said that, you practice self-care by like basically self-forgiveness, by forgiving yourself for every version of yourself you've ever been that isn't, doesn't hold up to maybe the woman you are today or want to be, or, and I say that I never thought of, and since then I've written so much on this because you said it, because I hadn't considered that self-forgiveness was such a big part of self-care and therefore self-love. And I think that even in those little day-to-day boundaries, Sophia, to bring it back to your question, it's like, yeah, like I forgive myself for, like being a like failed people pleaser, where I need that boundary and someone else might be dissatisfied with the boundary, but it works for me because if I can't love you and love me too, then like, I'm not doing it right.
I love that, Nicole. We've been best friends for years and I've never heard that, but I think that's in your actions in that way. You are constantly like catching up to yourself. And I think that is very cool.
Thank you so much. And, look, love is not like this place. It doesn't mean like, oh, and then everything's just perfect. Love is dangerous and wild and like unforgiving and unpredictable. And like, you know what I mean? Like that is actually like, it's not just like how amazing a person is or how amazing a relationship is or your passion for something. It's about like the journey that you go on, like through that and what that means. And like actually being able to throughout your life, experience different versions of that and like still choose to be in some sort of committed relationship with whatever that is, so it's all of the things. Like that's what love is. It's not perfect all the time.
Yeah, I so feel that because I feel like people are always like, you love. How do you stay so optimistic? And I was like, love is not always optimistic. It can be mad as hell. It can be like in full anxiety. It can be, it's actually this powerful energy that rides through an array of emotional states and ideas and in your past and in your present. And, it's the energy that's bigger than any of the kind of like emotions that it runs through. And so I always say, I was like, I'm not in a good mood all the time because I write about love often. I write about love because it is so complex and it does mean so many different things and it does cover so much emotional territory.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking like, especially in the pandemic, like I'm sure the like emphasis on love is so much stronger because like you're just having to find something that you love all the time in order to like, and there's other like in order to like get by, you're like, wait, I love this takeout now. Like now this is the most exciting thing. Like I love cooking. Like I was like, you know, like I'm loving baking bread. And you're like, do I love it? Or like actually think like it's an example of being like, I actually am finding joy in it. And so that is something that like we can also seek and like confuse that, not confuse it, but that is also a version of love, is finding joy in our friendships. And like, obviously everything is virtual, but then somehow I never feel closer to people at the same time. Like it's such a confusing thing where we're so far away from people. But at the same time, I'm like, I feel like I really know people when I catch up with them because there's not this small talk and this separation of like I never want to go back to like being out all the time. Not that I was, but I never want to be forced. I'm like nervous about the energy of going back.
The idea that you were out all the time is hilarious. Like I'm thrown right now by you.
No, I'm not out all the time. I was saying to Nicole the other day, and I was like, am I like behind? Like I do not, like I'm very happy everyone be healthy and all that, but I am not ready to be like socializing with strangers like all the time. And she was like, no.
Oh no.
No.
We can pause on that for a minute.
Yeah. And like, I think that now, but I will say to talk about community, because I think that's like an important thing that I listen to your weekly chats, Cleo, even though we are best friends, I like to be a part of the community as well. And I like in a very
Nicole pops in as well.
I do. I love to jump in alive.
Yeah, I love to jump into Cleo live because I'm like, she's got it going. I'm like, I feel like she's with her friends, but I'm like, we're your friends too. Like, just remember. But like, I thought community was like such a like I don't want to say random word, but like just a blanket word. Like I was like, people talk about community and your community. And I like heard it, but I never felt it till this time. And now I would say like my micro community, it obviously includes you guys, but like Cleo, I'd love to talk about like what is community to you? And also how can people find that community in all around the world in different places? Like it's not as accessible, especially if everyone's on their phones and distractions. Like how do you apply community to your life and how can other people?
Well, I think it's, I always, when I think about community, I always start with kind of the difference between connection and communication. And I always have felt that communication is connection with intention. And so community is gathering and it's, groups of people also with intention. And that's the difference between an audience, perhaps, maybe at a certain, random thing or, the sense of maybe kind of, even in the grocery store, you can kind of find a sense of community because I think that you start to know your local, frontline workers and things there. But, it is this idea that we are intentional with how we connect it with each other and communicate with each other. And so, I think that part of why some people like you, Sophia, feel really connected during COVID, which is a time where we're seeing each other so much less, is because you are connecting and not just communicating with your friends. You're very intentional with how you reach out and what we talk about and how we request our needs or are, what we're kind of considering or thinking about in life or reflecting on or where we feel like we need support. And so I think intention is really crucial to building meaningful community, at least. And, that's why I think that places and spaces like Little Market end up being these really incredible community hubs because they are centered on a really focused intention of, what the mission of, the ideas, the products and the space and the place and why we gather and why we make what we make and why we do what we do. And that really creates this idea of a community around it. And I think that whether it's for, your work or you're not, Nicole and I were talking recently about House of Harlow, and we were talking about it being something that has community because it's part of the DNA of her brand, is this idea that it's, she thinks about how it sleeps and what it listens to. And it's almost as if you're building this like whole world for a community to be able to live in. And so I think that, but you can't do that without being intentional every step of the way.
I love that. And I feel like, especially, Nicole, we felt both. I mean, I've known the Little Market forever, my relationship with Lauren and Hannah. But when Nicole first discovered it, I saw with her eyes just her being like, just knowing like she's such a storyteller and enjoys stories and it consumes so much like, literature and just knowing about it and knowing where your products come from. I never knew that would be important. So I'm curious.
Oh my God.
Nicole.
Remember,
Yeah.
it was Christmas and you took me there, and like, I walk in the store, obviously it's beautiful. We know that, of course. But like, you walk in there and like every single thing that you're touching has a story. And I can see like, it's like, oh, this is from, a woman and what she does. And like, I can see the world. I can see it. And I'm like, oh my God, I feel so great about spending my money here. Like the whole experience was just it just felt forward moving. It felt like a real connection. And I actually feel like we're craving that more than ever, even though we don't know it, For example, I have a friend, her name is Sophia Rossi, and she is always on her phone. And we recently, before the pandemic, we went horseback riding, and that horse demanded that Sophia get off her phone. She tried to like be cute and like hold the horse here and like text here. And the horse was like, honey, no for me. Yeah, it was like equine therapy. She was like, no. And anyway, so we ride the horse. Sophia gets off the horse and she's like, you know what? That moment actually, like working through that was like, it was so beautiful, even though it was so difficult, right? Because the horse is really giving her a hard time. And she got off the horse and she was like, that was such an amazing experience because you know what? It was a connection and it was communication. And actually this horse demanded that I get off my phone and connect with nature. And like, that was such a beautiful experience. And it was really difficult for her,
Yeah,
and
it was, yeah.
We didn't even do that necessarily to like have that moment, but I think like what you got was you're like, oh my gosh, like that was something that was bigger than me. It was something that's bigger than just like my everyday, like it's so easy for all of us, to just scroll and answer emails and answer texts and people need you. And you're in this kind of thing where you're like, the screen needs me right away. And like, to have that moment, I think was really helpful to Sophia to like really understand, like, and see for herself, like, oh my God, I so enjoyed what that communication was.
I think what we're saying too is that like these intentional times of communication, I don't even realize the need and the focus I have. The storytelling I need behind things, I didn't even realize I had. I have like go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, because the stories are an invitation to the community. So I feel like, Nicole, when you're shopping in the Little Market, it was actually that like you weren't being sold something, you were being invited into something.
Being invited into a world, a part of a community.
And that's all, that makes all the difference, and that's why Little Market can have a community.
And I feel like knowing where your products come from, knowing that it empowers women like to change their lives in these communities and in these cultures. And, I would love when the pandemic is over to do a trip with the Little Market, because I really do want to experience that. And when they talk about it, it sounds so amazing. And one of the things that blows my mind hearing from Lauren and Hannah talk about those trips is the creativity that happens in these places with the colors and the sort, like it makes you feel like nature is your art store. How do you guys use nature in your creative process?
I'm very inspired when I'm in my garden. I have an edible garden. I like to grow fruits and vegetables. Just being outside and like being in the sun just makes me feel alive. And it's like a real meditation for me. And I just love it. And I love being in the ocean. I'm so scared. I'm terrified. I'm terrified of sharks. But I just also feel so relaxed in it. It's like the closest thing to being outer space for us. And I just like love it and am obsessed.
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about like when I had Hello Giggles, there was like a really big focus on like empowerment and female voices. And as I sort of evolved from that like community, I was like, what is it like to sort of talk about empowerment in the next generation? Like what does that mean to you guys? Because I sort of feel like empowerment has, again, like another vague term where, of course, we want to increase the positivity in the world and of course, and do that. But like, it sort of also felt like it was this forced narrative on people that, we were expecting people to just, be so productive all the time. And that was what empowerment meant. And so like, I'm curious to, for you, Cleo, like what does empowering the next generation mean to you or look like? Or,
again, I think because I work obviously so much with words, it's really important. And I can't stress enough, especially when you're talking to young people, to have a shared definition of what you're talking about when you say words that have become really trend driven or really, really kind of overused. And I think that what you're saying more about empowerment is that it became a marketing trend that became really overextended and really overused, which means it becomes a little dangerous because it starts to mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And it's similar to self-care. Self-care like is not something that was like introduced, in the past like 7 years. It was popularized and marketed really heavily, and all of these wellness companies and things could spring up from it. But, we have been doing rituals as human beings since the beginning of time in order to have a mind, body, soul connection. We have always had self-care. It's just always been called ritual. And we've always put self-care into our relationships with others. It was just called rituals we had with others, whether that's the most original people in Africa to Israel, to whomever. And so, that is something, or it's found whether it's in prayer or in religion, that's meditation has always been a part of that. But again, meditation gets used and is like, all of a sudden you could be doing it wrong or right, And so I think that with empowerment, it's really critical that we, when you sit down with a young person, you have a shared definition of what empowerment means, And so you say to them, when I say empowerment, I'm talking about X, I'm talking about creating a space and platform for you to be your whole self as powerfully as possible. What does that look like to you? And it doesn't mean that like every single person has to be an entrepreneur, or every single person has to grind themselves down to the bone in order to be successful, or, that exhaustion is somehow the badge of honor in building something that's important. And so I think that, you start with an appropriate definition, or one that is meaningful, and then you just build the pathways to that definition with whomever you're talking to.
I love that. I mean, I think part of what I think we should, close the chat on, but also just bring to light is that all these things you want to apply to your daily life, and so like, especially when I look at your books and your journaling and Nicole, like the work we do just in general in our friendship to always hold each other accountable, to recap and set up, when we're going into situations together, like so much of that is like applying that. And so I am wondering, in terms of also with your book about journaling, how important is journaling to you, and how much do you really apply it to your day? Because I have noticed I am not a journal person, but I just started to, even on a small scale, because I wish you could even translate it to me. I don't even know what the feeling is that suddenly, like, I feel different when I journal. I feel different when I'm asked something, in your books to question,
I think writing is the freest form of therapy anyone could have. And it's similar. And I think people get scared of journaling for the same reason they're scared of meditation, is because they think they're doing it wrong or right. But Nicole, how many times has, a walk down the beach felt like more of a meditation, or given you more than a meditation than a traditional meditation, and so it's knowing and defining what those things are that do replenish you. And I always encourage everyone to write, whether they consider themselves a writer or not, because it's a way of being able to take all of the things that are going on inside of you and then put them in front of you. And then you can really take an inventory of like what everything means. And by the way, some of those things might have been, you, Sophia, you say you just started journaling, but perhaps you just started journaling to yourself because you have always been someone who is really, really expressive in how you go really deep into what you're feeling, thinking about, going through, deciphering, kind of like, really trying to pull apart and dissect. You've always been so good at that in writing, whether it's just text to a friend or sitting and having a conversation or getting on the phone or having that in person. And so, there's always been that practice in you that is like, I know everything doesn't belong in my body. And I think that, unfortunately, one of, the biggest kind of tragedies of the life we're living right now is that loneliness is one of the biggest problems in our society globally. And I think that not everyone has the privilege and the luxury of having friendships like ours. And so, if you don't have almost the friend to journal to in that way, or, kind of move it out of your body and put it somewhere to kind of move through it, being able, if a pen and a paper are nearby, you always have the space to reap that benefit, and have that moment of therapy, even when if you can't afford the therapist. And, I couldn't afford the therapist for most of my life. And if I couldn't have been able to write, even when my poetry was really, really bad, if I didn't have the space to do it, I don't know how I would have survived my early 20s.
I love that. I think that that's so incredible to know, because there is things where, it's come to me so late in life, but like you do want to get things out of your body. And Nicole actually taught me this because I see her relationship to books that she falls in love with, or a piece of art or a piece of music. And just knowing, Nicole, I'm curious for you, when you discover something like a song or a book or a piece of material of art, I feel like there is this connection that you have, and that it allows you to feel less lonely. And I didn't realize that things beyond people could make you feel connected. I didn't realize that like taking that space to have that could work. So I'm curious, did you always have that, or I've never even asked you that, but I just noticed the other day just being like, wow, this song makes me feel better, or this, a lot of it is that you're so present when you're doing something, so you're really enjoying it. But
I have always been so connected to music. It has just been able to transport me, it brings out feelings in me, and I think that like, in the same sense that we're, kind of always looking for connection, it's really beautiful that there are those things in the world like books and music and going to the little market, like all those moments that like really do make you feel whole and, make your soul full, and where you feel like, oh, like I really am like being what I am capable of being as a human, which is being able to feel and connect. And it's the best. And, I think that we as human beings chase it, and even when we don't know it.
Something I've always admired about you, Nicole, is that you have like a really amazing toolkit for just like what relaxes you, what makes you feel better, how you replenish. So whether it's like, oh no, I go on a drive and I drive on this street and I listen to this song and I do this, and like, that's what I do when I need this type of thing. Or, oh no, like I get out of town on these days to do da-da-da. And so, it really is such a testament to how connected you are with your needs. And I think that so many of us suffer because we don't know what we need, and I feel so lucky to be a woman most of the time, because we at least know we're supposed to kind of like figure it out. Like how many times, I know I have to do this with Simon all the time, where I'm like, have to plan his next few days, because I'm like, you say you want to do all these things, but then you're going to be really pissed when this happens, or you're going to be really overwhelmed when this happens, or like, they'll think that they can like do all this stuff because there's no kind of like self-care and like masculine conversation. So they never kind of have that connection to like, ooh, wait, how is that going to make me feel on, next Thursday? And so I always feel so lucky because we sit here and we just dive in on like, oh yeah, like I have to say, even if I've been friends with this person for this amount of years, I just don't feel the same. I don't feel good around them. And we have so much space to lead with how we feel about something. And I just feel so blessed to have a group of girlfriends who is on the same page of that and helps me to prioritize that, because I see from my own baby daddy that it's just like not in everyone. And it's really not in male community, which I think is so fascinating.
In terms of globally connecting to women around the world, and part of what the Little Market does so well of is like bringing those stories to light. I feel really insular in my community and not knowing what the rest of the world is going. And do you guys have any goals in the next few years to travel, to connect and to other communities? Like, is that of interest to you guys?
I love traveling. I think, that's to me, like the best thing you can do to, connect to the world and just see how many different ways there are to live, and how many, different types of people there are in the world. Travel is so important to me, but like, I would love to like understand the world more. I would love to meet, even though I've met so many different types of people, I would like to meet even more. I would like to experience and learn and be inspired by, and, meet artists around the world. I mean, that just sounds amazing.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that we'll learn that we don't even know what we'll learn, but that so many of these people don't call themselves artists. This is their, their how they're making the material. So I'm so curious to see true artisans and support them. And I'm so grateful that we have the Little Market, and that aesthetically, of course, it's beautiful. But when you hear about the trips and you see the materials, you're like, this wooden spoon means so much.
It means so much. Yeah.
It means so much.
And by a human.
And I never think about that. And so I am looking forward to doing trips with you guys.
I also think that one of the, the best ways, to teach and role model for the next generation is to move with an understanding that, we have global neighbors, and that, as women, like we really are each other's business, and we have to really look out for each other. And one of the ways we do that is by investing in each other. And it's really lucky when people create companies like the Little Market so that you can invest in women globally. Women own less than 1% of the real estate in the world, and in so many communities, there's if it were not for people creating a market for these goods, and doing this work so that we are able to make these micro investments, it would be a complete and utter tragedy to that community, and women wouldn't have the opportunities. And I feel really lucky that I've traveled to a lot of communities and visited with a lot of female artisans from around the world in my work. And you do understand and know how much it means, but, and how much social impact, how the difference between social impact and what that means than and the idea of charity. Everyone from around the world wants to know and understand that they are here on purpose and have a purpose, and work allows for you to feel purposeful. People don't always just want a check written out to them. Women and people really like to be able to create and make and do and sell and see their products move all around the world and feel proud of the things they make when they see it in other people's homes, just like we do. It makes you feel proud. I feel proud every time I wear something from House of Harlow, and I feel so proud whenever I see my book and someone reading my book in a park. And so, it's everyone, woman around the world wants that feeling, no matter who she is or where she comes from. And so, however we can make those investments, and, we can visit them now in ways, by shopping their goods and involving ourselves in their cultures, and teaching our kids about their cultures by shopping at the Little Market. And then eventually, hopefully, we can really step foot in their culture and in their spaces.
Well, I just want to say I'm really grateful to you guys to have this conversation, because I know that we talk all the time, but I think another element of getting to ask each other questions that might feel a little bit more, intense. It feels nice. I mean, I think in the group chat, we're definitely talking about a bunch of different things, but I really love you guys.
Love you so much.
Love you.